what you usually do, but I'm doing the best I can up here. I give honor to Brother and Sister Grendel for allowing me to come back. Tell you what, you have a wonderful pastor and pastor's wife. They say, a lot of the order of the church comes from the pastor, but when you walk in and see smiles, that's from the pastor's wife. That's what I've heard. I didn't make the rules. I just repeat them. But that's an amazing thing. I tell you what, she's been so sweet and kind to us, having us, letting us be here with you guys. And this past Sunday, of course, my wife is here, Tia, and my little girl Paisley and Liam and Dennis. So if their frowns are a little bigger than they were Sunday, it's a they're struggling today. Amen. I tell you what, if you don't mind, I'm going to do things a little bit differently for a little while. Go through a couple of things. And I don't know, Sunday wasn't really quite how I am. I like to have fun. Is that all right? Do y'all like to have fun? The joy of the Lord is our strength. I'm all about laughter. I'm all about fun. Okay? So if you don't mind, you can go ahead and be seated. I've got a little bit to get through and some stuff to talk about. And I will say this because I didn't get to Sunday, but there's one person here I knew a little better than everyone else when I walked in. I wouldn't feel right if I didn't make her a little nervous, but Sister JC, wow, y'all got y'all's hands. Tell you what, no, I'm just teasing. We have gotten to be friends, and you know what? When I really get along with somebody, they can take what I'm throwing at them, they can throw it right back, and she is one of those. If she won't take it, she'll throw it right back, and we've had a great time being together when she come down to see Rachel and them. She really is awesome. Pay me later. So I want to talk about something. I want to talk specifically to the unqualified people. All right, and I'm one of these people, unqualified. There's a book that talks about the unqualified, and you've heard the saying, different books, different quotes where God doesn't call the qualified; He qualifies the call. Where the truth is, if we were all qualified for God's mercy, hey, you sign up, see if you're eligible for God's mercy, God's grace. We wouldn't. There's nothing that we have done that makes us deserving. There's nothing we can do. We just serve a merciful God and a graceful God who says, you know what, in spite of you not being everything you should be, I'm going to give this to you. It doesn't matter what your credit score is. It doesn't matter how fast you drove, how many tickets you get. None of that matters. None of what happened yesterday. I'm going to do this for you anyways because I believe in you. And what does it mean to be qualified? The definition of qualified is to be fitted as by training or experience for a given purpose, competent, having complied with specific requirements and precedent conditions. We're eligible. So if you're looking for a job that says, hey, you got to run 20 miles a day, I'm not going to qualify. I'm not going to qualify. It looks or deceive me. You might look that bad. I'm not going to qualify. I'm excited about the pizza tonight. I'm just saying. I got close and I remember there's pizza and I was like, oh yes, this is amazing. Won't He do it? And but we're human, and with that we are layers and upon layers of imperfection, of damaged goods, of shattered dreams, voided goals, because we feel broken and unqualified. And the truth is, a lot of times, of course, I'm talking about being unqualified, but a lot of time what happens in this is because of something has never happened before, maybe because throughout our life we said, well, you know what, I've been passed by for opportunity after opportunity, and I can't imagine how God's going to bring me here. This has never happened before. I've never seen something like this specific situation be handled before. I've never seen it happen. Everyone says, oh, that'll never happen. That's never happened. And I'm going to talk to you for a little bit, and this is going to be the fun part. Okay, this is going to be the fun part. This is all I do have a story to tell you, and I know they said I only had an hour and a half, so I'll just preach this twice. We can take up all the time. Yeah, no one told me a time limit. Don't start now though. No backs. We just because something hasn't happened yet doesn't mean it never will. And I am a strong believer in this, but not only in the way that you're thinking. You see, I love being spiritual, And sometimes that spiritual mixes with my humor, and I can't stop it. And I get that shovel in my hand. I have trouble stopping, Mr. Grindle. So you just stop me if I keep going too far. So sometimes I get going, and so I'll tell you, I'm gonna be honest with you. I have a terrible fear of height. I don't do heights, which means I don't do roller coasters. I don't do skydiving. And it does not matter if someone tells me this roller coaster, no one has ever fallen out before. There's a first time for everything. If they tell me no one has ever fallen out of this plane before, I'm not going. I'm not going to be the one. And you say that wouldn't happen. That's crazy numbers, and I'm going to prove to you this, not just crazy numbers. So I was invited on a bear hunt, and somebody like, oh goodness, it's like that going on a bear hunt. Yeah, I was excited about it. I thought this is going to be so cool. My brother said, hey, why don't you and Dad and Nathan, y'all come on, my brother-in-laws, let's all go on this bear hunt in Canada, and it's going to be so much fun. It's a once-in-a-lifetime trip. Let's do this. It's going to be so cool. I'm excited. I'm thrilled. Everything's exciting leading up to the trip. It comes the day of the trip. We get all of our guns, all of our everything, and we get on the airplane. We get to this side of the border, and we're going to cross into Canada the next morning, and we get into this hotel room, and all of a sudden something hits me that I've never seen, like a thing where like someone's not scared of a bear. And I start thinking, right, it's just me and my brother-in-law. We're sharing a room that night, and I'm sitting there thinking, a little bit of anxiety starts sitting in, Sister Grindle. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not above it. Okay, I own my imperfections, I own my fears, and I started having a little bit of a panic attack. Like, you know what? I don't know what to do because I know there's one bear that you're supposed to lay down. There's one you're supposed to stand up and scream. There's one you're supposed to just run. There's one that you're supposed to taste good. And so I don't really know which one I'm going to be facing that next morning. Okay, and so I tell you, when I tell you I'm nervous, I'm nervous. And so you know what? I get on YouTube, and I start looking up what to do if I come in contact with the bear. Go ahead, you laugh, but you go on a bear hunt. See if you don't look up the same videos. Okay. So we go on there, and I'm looking on all this stuff, and they say, if you have two big 5-gallon buckets together, well, I don't know about you, when I go hunting, I don't carry two 5-gallon buckets. So that was not helpful. The next thing was stand up and look as big as you can and scream as loud. Well, I'm already not that big. Okay, I'm not that tall. I'm not, and so I'm like, this is gonna be. But you know what? Okay, worst case scenario, I'm just gonna stand up and make myself look as big as I can. I'm gonna scream top of my lungs. That's the plan, at least. That is the plan. If everything goes perfect, that's the plan. And so we get up the next morning. My brother-in-law's, man, all those videos you're watching. He said, I woke up nervous. He said, I had nightmares all night long of the bears. So I'm over here getting prepared, and I'm causing him to have nightmares. So we get to the campsite in Canada, and, when you go deer hunting in East Texas, I get on the four-wheeler, I drive, half a mile to the deer stand or something. But this place, they take us 30 minutes in a car and drop us off. Like, hey, okay, your brother's only 16 miles that way. Means nothing to me. This means nothing to me. And so he's like, but all this stuff, and I share with them my fears. Okay, I'm open about this. I want to be aware. I want us to be on the same page that I'm scared. I want you to know, if I call you and say, come get me, don't be like, okay, I'll come in a little bit. Like, you come now. I want you to know when it gets, I want to be the first one in that truck. Bear or no bear, I want to get there. I want to eat dinner tonight. I don't want to be dinner. And so that's where my mindset was. And I'm not exaggerating this story. This is how I truly felt. I was a believer in this. And I tell them, like, look, I've watched all these videos, and they're all laughing at me, Sister Brenda. I'm telling you, they're all laughing at me. My brothers, my dad, all of them laughing at me. They're like, this is crazy. And they get the guy who owns this place. It's like, tell him this will never happen. Son, that's never happened here before. This has never happened. That was his first lie to me. Unless he didn't know. I can't say that he lied. He might not have known. I don't know. I don't know if he had known or not. But he told me this has never happened before. We've never had a situation like this. We've never had that happen. The only time someone's really gotten hurt is when they get off the stand at dark because they don't wait for us. And well, I'm not going. So they said, don't wait for us, and they accidentally step on them because it's so dark they can't see them. And they're scared of you, so they'll try to get away from you. But we've never had any of them. They won't come close to you, and they won't mess with you. So they bring us out there, and I'm expecting a cool deer stand like we have around here, and they bring me to the woods, and it's the morning. It's the evening hunt, so it's already daylight when I get there. And hey, you go over here, put you on the stand. I look at the stand. It's basically two by fours holding up a pallet tree, and that was the first sign that I thought I really need to get back in that truck and go back. This trip's not worth the bear. It's not worth it. I'm gonna I'm not just gonna get eaten by a bear or be lost in Canada. I'm also gonna fall and I'm stuck here. And so all these things are going through my mind because I have to think about it. And so how my mind goes, like, you hear me right now, I can't stop. And so we get there. And so anyways, I climb that stand and I'm okay. And then I see those tail lights just start getting further and further. And once they turn the corner and I can't see them anymore, when I tell you that something just hit me and it wasn't the power of the Holy Ghost, I realized that I was more alone in that moment than I have ever been. And I'm sitting there and I'm just like so nervous. And I'm trying to figure out my surroundings. I'm thinking, okay, at least it never happened. Bears don't climb these trees. None of this happened. And in that moment, I look at all the trees around me. And it was the craziest thing. There are claw marks in every single tree around me, further than I'm sitting. So we're on the same mindset. I've got one more tree I need to check this on, the one I'm sitting in. And so I'm literally sitting here talking to myself like, I know if I look up, there's claw marks. And if there's claw marks above me, they've got to get there somehow. And I look, and sure enough, there are claw marks all above this tree. And I'm sitting there, and I'm so mad because I realized they lied to me to get me here. I am here under false pretense, okay? But then I'm thinking, okay, so they lied about the climbing trees. Maybe they don't like humans. Maybe they really don't like humans. That won't be a thing, okay? And so I'm sitting there on this hunt, and everything's kind of nervously peaceful. And, you know, I'm on the edge, Brenda, and I am getting somewhere with this, okay? This is how I disarm you. But so I'm sitting there, and I see a bear comes out, and I'm thinking, and at that moment, I forgot about the fears. When I saw the bear, I think, this is so cool. It was one of the coolest experiences I've ever had in that moment. I'm watching this bear, and it's away from me, so I know where it's at. Okay, so that's one exciting thing about it. It was really exciting because I'm watching it eat the food that they had set out and all this stuff. It's really cool. I'm like, I'm taking so many pictures, so many videos of all of this bear, and that's amazing. And then it leaves and walks away, and I'm like, man, you know, I didn't get to shoot it. It wasn't the one that they told me to shoot that we were looking for. We had paid for and all this stuff. So I'm okay. Well, I'll wait. And so I'm waiting a little bit later, and then I see another one. It comes and it disappears, and then I'm sitting there on my phone. All of a sudden, I hear something. Okay, and I'm gonna sit down for a moment to portray what's going on here. I'm sitting there like this, and I hear something right underneath me. And all I had to do was lean forward about 6 inches, and there's a bear at the foot of my stand. My phone's already in my hand. I'm not moving too quick, so I just switched to video mode, and I start recording. And would you believe that bear's just sitting down at the bottom looking around? And you know what he does? That bear starts climbing the ladder that I climbed up in to get to that stand. So now we've got a problem because the second lie has just surfaced. And I am freaking out. I am terrified. Well, this stand won't hold both of us. One of us is getting out of this tree. I don't know which one is getting out first, but one of us is leaving. Okay? And I didn't know how many bullets. My first bear hunt. It might have been an irrational fear. This is my first bear hunt. I had a lot of bullets. And that was not, it was not the full-size bear that we went for. And, you know, we want the big body mount. But at that time, I thought, if it'll make a toilet seat cover out of it, I'm going to take that bear home if it keeps coming. That bear kept coming up. It got over halfway up those stairs, and I went back to my training that I studied for the whole 2 nights before. And I stood up, and I said, ah! That's what I thought I said. Really, it was more like, and that bear just stopped, leaned back, looked at me. It didn't run away. It didn't run away from me. It literally, I have the video. It leaned back, looked at me. And I think it was sizing me up, and so I realized I got to get a little bigger. I've got to get a little louder. So I stood up and kind of jumped, and I screamed. at it, and this time the fear came out, and that bear ran about 10 feet, stopped and looked at me. I'm saying, okay, if it comes back a second time, I am taking this bear home with me. It's going home with me. It is going home with me. And luckily it never did. Okay? Moral of the story is that's why I don't do things that it's never happened before. Because I'll be the first. And I got back to the dinner table that night, and they're like, "How was your hunt? How was your hunt? How was your hunt?" And I'm waiting my moment because I've got video proof, or no one would believe me. I really believe they would not have believed me if I didn't have video proof. And we get to that table, and I'm like, "Oh, let me just show you. Let me just show you what happened." And so I go and I play the video, and they just start laughing, and they think it's the most humorous thing they've ever seen, that my life was in danger. I was at the grasp of death right there in that moment. I come face to face with a bear like David did in the Bible, except my bare hands are not as tough as his. But I had a big gun in my hand. Anyways, it was the whole thing was, I have a fear of that, and I think about that whenever it's a first. Like, hey, when someone tells me, "Oh, that's never happened before," I do not care. I'm not doing it, and it usually leads to this story or one of the other stories. Like, I'm not doing this because I'm the one that it's going to happen. I'm the one that's going to happen to. But I say that because just because we can't imagine or we can't understand it, we don't know the hows, the when, the where, the what, doesn't mean that God can't. It doesn't mean that God won't. Just because we can't see how A gets to B doesn't mean God doesn't have a way for one to connect to the other. And so many times in our life, you'll see it. We get to a place where we say, "I'm up against the wall. I have no idea how I get over this situation. I have no idea how I get through this situation." And people around me are like, "I don't know. Honestly, I think you're stuck. I've never seen God do this before." But God takes those opportunities to go and do it. He takes those opportunities to say, "You know what? My ways are better than your ways. My understanding is better than your understanding. My timing is better than your timing." Just because everyone else can't see it or haven't ever seen it happen before doesn't mean God's not in control. With the bear story, they said it wouldn't. They said it never had happened. That night they told me, "Don't waste your time worrying about this." And that's what they tell you. You know what? Let's say you want to be, God, you've been praying, "God, I want to be used by you. God, I want you to lead someone for me to witness to. God, I want you to open a door for me at my work. I want you to do this." And someone's like, no one has ever gone from where you are to where that is. No one has ever gone from this point to that point. And that doesn't mean anything to God. So many times in the Bible, God does things for the first. God likes to make an entrance. When he enters into your situation, he loves to make an entrance. And that's why every time he does, the excitement comes when he comes into the situation, because you know when he shows up in your situation, no one ever left the same way. It didn't matter what the situation was. When God showed up in that situation, there was a change. There was a change. Whether he walked up to the tomb where they had already given up on, and he said, "Roll away the stone," life came from that. It didn't matter if it was the lepers. It doesn't matter what situation it was. When he comes there, he doesn't leave things the same way. So it doesn't matter that they said, "You know what, they told me," they said, "Don't stay up preparing for that. You won't need it." No, you prepare for it. You pray for it. You study for it. You say, "You know what, God's going to put someone in your life. He's going to put someone that's going through a situation that needs your testimony. They need what you have been working on, what God has placed in your heart." Don't worry if everyone else says, "That's not going to happen." Don't worry about it. There is going to be a time that you're going to find yourself in that situation you've been thinking about, and God's going to say, "This is what I was preparing." It might not be a bear, but it might be a scripture that's been coming to mind. It might be a Bible study that's been coming to your mind. It might be, "You know what, I just feel like there's somebody I need to pray for." In that moment, you do it because God is working through you, trying to show you something that's far beyond our understanding. In 1 Samuel chapter 16, where I'm going to read from 1 Samuel chapter 16. We're going to read verses 1 through 12. But we're going to be talking about David. David must have been considered unqualified. Most of the time in the Bible, you find David in the fields. You find him with the sheep. His brothers are doing the cool things. Family's doing the cool things, but he is in the sheep. He was put out to pasture because he was unqualified. They say, "Look, we don't have anything. You know what, David? Just go watch the sheep. Go watch them." What does it mean to put out to pasture? It's like basically saying, "Hey, look, we don't really have a job for you. We're going to make something for you. Just go and do that. That's what they did to David. But what they didn't know is what you do in the pasture is what prepares you to wear the crown. It's what you do in that waiting period that prepares you for when you're called. It's what you do when you say, you know what, no one's watching me, no one sees me up here doing it, being the center of attention. No one sees it. That's when God says, that's when I'm building you. Well, up there, that's not the building place. That's the calling place. This is the building place. The waiting room is what builds you. It's what it's when we have our time and say, hey, look, this is what I want you to do. This is where I want you to go. It's what you do in secret when no one's watching that prepares you for what God has in your life. 1 Samuel chapter 16, verse 1 through 12. And the Lord said unto Samuel, how long wilt thou mourn for Saul, seeing I have rejected him from reigning over Israel? Fill thine horn with oil, and go. I will send thee to Jesse the Bethlehemite, for I have provided me a king among his sons. And Samuel said, how can I go? If Saul hear it, he will kill me. And the Lord said, take an heifer with thee, and say, I come to sacrifice to the Lord. And call Jesse to the sacrifice. And I will show thee what thou shalt do, and thou shalt anoint unto me him whom I name unto thee. He said, we go there, and I'm going to tell you, when you get there, I'm going to tell you who it is. I'm going to tell you who it is. And Samuel did what the Lord spake, and came to Bethlehem, and the elders of the town trembled at his coming, and said, comest thou peaceably? And he said, peaceably I am come to sacrifice unto the Lord. Sanctify thyself, and come with me to the sacrifice. And this is what the scripture says, and he sanctified Jesse and his sons, and called them to the sacrifice. Okay? Now it says he sanctified Jesse and his sons. Now when he says his sons, it portrays that they were all there. It was portrayed, he said, well, you know what? They're all the sons are here. It says he sanctified his sons and called them, but David wasn't even a forethought. He was considered nothing more than a sheep boy. He wasn't even there. Whenever they said he sanctified his sons, all those who thought, well, you know what? This one, he's the strongest. This one, he's the best looking. This one, he's the wisest. He's the smartest. All those that he said, well, these are my qualified ones. These are the ones who can fill these shoes. It's got to be one of these. And that's who, when they show up, he says, yeah, my boys are here. Jesse and his sons are here. But it wasn't one of them. And it came to pass when they come that he looked on Eliab and said, surely the Lord's anointed is before him. He was sure that he found the qualified because he had the look of someone capable. Well, these all look like capable young men. They all look like the ones who could be the next king. They all look like they're the ones that are going to be called by God. But the Lord said unto Samuel, look not on his countenance or on the height of his stature, because I have refused him. For the Lord seeth not as man seeth, for the man looketh on the outward appearance, but the Lord looketh on the heart. He was refused because God didn't see what he was looking for. Well, he had all these guys who were no doubt good looking. They were built. They were hard workers. They had all the things that you would want when you see from the outside. But God said, no, it's not one of them. I don't see what I'm looking for. I see strength. I see wisdom. I see this. But there's something that I'm missing. It's just not here. And so he was refused. Then Jesse called Abinadab and made him pass before Samuel, and he said, neither hath the Lord chosen this. Then Jesse made Shema to pass by, and he said, neither hath the Lord chosen this. And again, Jesse made 7 of his sons pass before Samuel. And Samuel turned to Jesse and said, the Lord hath not chosen thee. And finally Samuel said, okay, we've gone through this. Something's not right. And Samuel, in verse 11, Samuel said unto Jesse, are here all thy children? He said, there remaineth yet the youngest. Are all your kids here? Like, we've gone through this. This is, it says your sons are here. Are all your kids here? And he says, well, the youngest isn't here. And behold, it's like, and just so you know, before we bring him out here, he keepeth the sheep. He's with the sheep. So kind of a waste. It's kind of a way. And this is the dad talking. That's my boy, but he's not like the others. He's with the sheep. He's with the sheep. And so he said, behold, he keepeth the sheep. And Samuel said unto Jesse, send and fetch him, for we will not sit down till he come hither. When asked if all of his children were here, he started making a list because he couldn't imagine it would be David. And he said, well, here's this one. He's the strongest of them all. When they get to roughhousing, he's always the winner. This one, he just dresses the best all the time. No one outdresses him. This one, He wins all the games. He's got the smarts. And he goes down, I just imagine he goes down the line of why each one of these is qualified. But then when it comes to when it comes to David, he said, well, yeah. When Samuel said unto Jesse, are all the children here? He said, there remaineth the youngest, behold, he keepeth the sheep. Said, I don't know that it's him. He's not really qualified for this position. He's not really qualified to do what you're saying you came here looking. He said, we're not going to leave until you get him here. But he replied, well, there's the youngest, and basically he's saying there's something you should know. And in an embarrassment, I don't know how to say this, but he's keeping the sheep. He's out in the pasture. So David must have been considered unqualified, and that's why he was out to pasture. And putting something out to pasture is giving up their job. You move them to an unimportant job. You kind of keep them out of the way. But God uses unqualified people to do great. If you look back in David and Goliath, we all know the story of David and Goliath. But there's unqualified and unnamed people that God uses for David to fight that victory. So David killed Goliath. We're all in agreement with that. For that to happen, David, once again, before that battle, we find David watching the sheep. You read the scripture, it says David was with the sheep, and there's a thing in there, if you go look, and this wasn't in my notes, but if you go look in there, it says there's an unnamed person who shows up to relieve David, to keep the sheep for him. This tells me David was a man after God's own heart. He wasn't going to leave what he was put over to go do something else until someone else came to relieve him. And that's what God did. He said, look, I'm not going to leave what I'm already doing. I'm not going to leave my sheep until there is someone else to relieve me. And so David, there's an unnamed person. He doesn't have a name. I think he's named in the Bible, if I remember correctly, keeper of the sheep is all they said. The keeper of the sheep comes, he relieves David. David goes down, and his father says, hey, I've got these wagons, take them to your brothers. He pulls up to the battlefield, and there's another unnamed person that says the keeper of the chariot, who shows up right at the same time when David shows up to take the wagon. So he takes the wagon, and David shows up just in time to hear, as Scripture says, they go through, and if you read it in the way that it's written, it goes back, and at this point, when David gets there, when they take his chariot, it says then he walks out there. Goliath comes out and does his spiel, fee, fi, fo, fum, send me a man, and he does his, and Scripture says this, and it separates it. The Bible says, but this time, David heard it. The only thing that changed was here God sent an unnamed man to say, hey, you know what? Go get the one that's in the pasture. No name. Just go get the one that's in the pasture. Then he goes, he shows up with the wagon to feed the soldiers. He says, you know what? There's lots of soldiers out there. He says, hey, go watch the chariot. So he shows up. What are the odds? If God's timing and God's purpose is not right, what are the odds he gets David out of the pasture? He sends someone to be there at the right time. Sends the wagon and the keeper to be there at the right time. For David to show up on the battlefield right at the right time to hear Goliath's spiel. And for David to be the only one willing to take on that battle. All from the person who is in the pasture. The unqualified. The one who is unqualified. Why was he unqualified? Because he hadn't been taught he may not have been taught the sword the way the soldiers had. He hadn't learned the shield the way that the soldiers had. He hadn't trained from the same trainer that they had. They had the fancy training, but he had one thing that they didn't have. He had a trust in God. He had an understanding, it doesn't matter what I have. It doesn't matter what weapons go with me. It doesn't matter. And this is where he brings back up his lion and his bear. He said, I fought the lion and a bear before, and this giant is no different. He's saying, hey, he came with a difference. That they came saying, you know what, I've got the sword and I've tried it and I know what it'll do. And this sword's strong, but this is a different game. He sent and brought him in, and he was ruddy and with all beautiful countenance and goodly to look at. And the Lord said, arise and anoint him, for this is him. David walks out, and they said it, and it says all the good things about it. It says, yep, arise. This is the one that I want. This is the one that I want. You see, David was committed to his father's sheep, and perhaps this wasn't the first gathering that he had missed. That's what I'm feeling when I read this. I feel like this wasn't the first time David had been left out of the camp. This wasn't the first time David had missed a party. This wasn't the first time David had missed a family trip, because David said, you know what, I've got to look over my father's sheep. I want to go with my brothers. I want to go do all these other things. I want to go and do stuff they do, but I'm going to stay committed to my Father's sheep. And he made a commitment. And he was committed to the sheep, and I believe that is the commitment that made him qualified. While the others might have had time, they might have done other things, I believe that commitment is what qualified David more than the others. God said, look, I know these others, they might be bigger, they might be stronger, they might have more brains, but there's a commitment that they're lacking. I want someone who's going to be there when I call them. I want someone who's going to be there in a prayer when no one else shows up. I want someone who's going to find a prayer closet when no one else is around. I want that kind of commitment. I want someone who wants a relationship with me regardless of what's going on, regardless of who's looking at it, regardless of what role they play. I want someone who is going to stay committed. And that's why God doesn't call the qualified. He calls the committed. I'm not calling those who are just because they look like they can do the part. I want those who they've held on to something, holding on to something with everything they have. But as I said, we are all unqualified for the mercy and grace we were shown, for the blessing we received. He didn't call the one who prays so everyone can see how spiritual they are, because God will not bless what we pretend to be. When Jesse's sons all showed up, I guarantee you they all knew they knew what he was there for. And they went in there and they dressed in their nicest clothes. And they went and they cleaned up the best that they could. And they made their appearance to be everything that they wanted it to be, everything that they thought a king should look like. And they said, you know what, a king would have these kind of shoes. A king would have this kind of cloak on. A king would have this kind of hat. This is how the king would dress. And this is what a king would do. And he called none of them. But he called the one who was in the field. He called the one who was out there dirty with the sheep, dirty with the ones that no one else wanted anything to do with. He said, no, it's not these. These are great young men. They're great, handsome men. They're young men. They're strong. They're muscles. All the things. They check all the boxes, but there's something missing. Is there someone else? Oh, yeah. And then I just imagine David coming in. You know, he's been out there. I don't know what day he killed the lion or the sheep, or what he killed this day, or his clothes are ripped. He's probably been out there. Probably had to get a sheep out of some thorns. Maybe his clothes are ripped. He's got blood coming down his arms. Whatever. He looks a mess. And his brothers are. I can imagine everyone saying, "Hey, look for a king." Bringing David. He's bringing. Oh man, this is so embarrassing. Everyone's here watching this, and David walks in, and he's not afraid to go after the lost sheep. He's not afraid to go to the battle when something comes against it. He's not afraid to go into it. He's got a relationship, because you know what? When you find yourself, there's something special about being in the field. When he was out there in the field, you see, when you're out there in nature with everything that God, you're literally surrounded by everything God created. There's a peace there. There's a peacefulness there. And he said, you know what? I recognize that voice. It wasn't that David looked handsome and had all this stuff, but I feel like when David showed up, he recognized I heard this voice before. Even though he was out there, no one saw what he was doing. I believe David had a time every day where while watching the sheep, said, you know what, I'm gonna just walk with God. I'm gonna just pray I'm gonna spend some time with God. And I believe that's one of the things they say, he's committed. There was no reason for him to do that. He could have been out there muttering, well, no one wants sheep. No one wants to see, hey, I've had to watch cows before, and they've gotten out of the fence, and I've been out there, and cow. I want to tell them I never saw these cows. I didn't see any cows. They didn't get out of the fence, but David's like, no. I said, okay, over here, and all day long, just the same thing. He walked with Jesus, and he talked with Jesus, and he told him all about his troubles, and he created a relationship there, and he stayed committed to God, and he stayed committed to the sheep. He stayed committed to what he was put over. It doesn't matter if it was a sheep. If we want to put it to nowadays terms, it would have been the bathroom. Let's say he's like, you know what? There's people up there, preachers, people up there doing the sound. There's people up there singing, but I'm back here cleaning the toilet. He could have so easily said, you know what? I'm going to murmur. I'm going to complain. I'm upset. I'm having to mow the grass while they're in there setting up the banquet hall, sampling all the goodies. But David wasn't that kind of guy. It wasn't within him to be that way, because he realized it doesn't matter what I'm doing as long as I'm serving the kingdom. There's a joy that I get. As long as I'm serving the kingdom of God, there is a greatness that I can't comprehend. There's something going to come around the corner. Oh, David, no one's ever going to call you. Have you seen yourself? No one's ever going to reach into your situation. No one has ever before. Tell me, Dave, when do you know of a shepherd boy becoming king? It's never happened before. That's not something you see, but then that's where we go back to God says, oh, you don't think that? No, there's a relationship here you don't understand. You might not see it, but there's a relationship. That boy is committed. He is been working on this in secret. That which you do in secret is rewarded greatly. He didn't call the one who prayed so everyone could see, because he called the one who prayed out in the field with the sheep who gets no credit. He called the unqualified. He called the passionate. He called the committed. If you ever feel unqualified, you say, you know what, I feel like God has called me to do something, and I just don't know if I'm the right person for this. I don't know if I'm, I've made my mistakes. I've got my situations. I'm unqualified. You are 100% correct. You're unqualified. I'm unqualified. God doesn't use me. God doesn't allow me to say things because I'm worthy of anything that comes from that. I feel like some days Sister Brenda, and this is not for me. I'm just saying, sometimes I have to look at myself. I think, you know what? God's really scraping the bottom of the bucket. And sometimes I think, you know what? With things that I've done with my sin, with my past, with my life, things, you know what? I don't know why He would do this. But I think, you know what? Hey, because there's someone else out there that, hey, there's hope for them. There's hope for you. And there's someone out in the world that's looking for you. Maybe they know where you came from. Maybe they know your history. And they're watching you saying, wow, if they can do it, I can do it. If God can do that in their life, He can do it in my life. If God can do that in their situation, it's no longer about, I've never seen it before. It doesn't matter if you've never seen it. All that is an opportunity for God to do something. All that is an opportunity. Well, God's never done this. God, I've been praying for healing for 10 years. And you know what? Tomorrow, I'm going to pray for healing again. Just because He didn't do it yesterday doesn't mean He's not going to do it tomorrow. Every day I say, you know what? Because I'm going to stay committed. Because that's when God says, hey, that's what draws my attention. When you're committed. When you're committed. If you go and you say, you know what? I haven't prayed in 10 years. I'm going to pray. God hears you. When you go to day 2, God says, man, there's just a familiarity. There's a relationship formed. There's a deeper love. There's a deeper connection. There is somebody who is trying to make a commitment. And God honors that. So if you feel like you're unqualified, it's true, you are. And I am. Musicians, you can get ready. I know this is a little different. We're just going to have a time. But, there's a lot of unqualified people in the Bible that you can look. Peter denied Jesus 3 times. Was used by God greatly. Paul killed thousands of Christians, but was used by God greatly. Noah was an alcoholic. Moses was a murderer. Samson was arrogant. Rahab was a prostitute. All these people were used by God in a miraculous way. While someone else looked at their situation on the outside and said, why would you think He would use you? How in your mind do you see God doing something in your life? Since when does God do that? Why would God use you? He's got so many people who are qualified to do that. He's got so many people who dress the part. He's got so many people that can do this perfectly. Why would God use you? If God can use these people that I just told you about, God can use them according to His purpose. He can definitely use you because He calls the committed. All it takes is a commitment. You'll stand with me across this place. It's not too late to make a commitment. It doesn't matter what your history is. It doesn't matter what your family comes from. It doesn't matter if you're the only one in your family that's in this. It doesn't matter what's going on. Maybe you've been told that that's just the way it is, that, look, I wish that your life was different, but it's just the way it is. The rich get richer. This is the way it is. That, the called get the blessed. This is the way it is because things have always been this way. But I'm telling you, God doesn't say, hey, look, I'm looking at your situation from the outside and you're not in a place for this. God looks at the desire of your heart. He's looking for the one who says, God, I know I come with nothing. I come empty-handed, and I have no reason for you to use me, God. I have no reason for you to call me. I have no reason for you to change my life, to change my situation. But God, if you see you have a place for me in your kingdom, I don't care where it is. God, I want to be there. I want to be committed to you. God, I feel unqualified. I feel inadequate. But God, if there's any way that you see fit to use me in your kingdom, God, I will. I will, God. Whatever you want me to do, God, it doesn't matter what it is, but I want to serve you, God. Maybe you've been told that that's the way it was, and you never do it, but I want you to know tonight you have an opportunity tonight to make a fresh commitment with God, saying, God, Maybe I've thought things were a different way. Maybe I've thought things were a certain way. Maybe I've gone about things the wrong way. But God, I want to make a new commitment. I'm not going to put parameters on you, God. I'm not going to put chains on you. God, go free in my life. Run around.